Look at this moment from the 2018 G7 summit in Charlevoix. The leaders of the world's richest democracies thought they could use sheer posture and shared values to keep an unpredictable American president inside the system they built. By the 2026 summit in Evian, France, this containment strategy has failed. The U.S. president now openly rejects the fundamental authority of the alliance itself. This chart highlights the G7's structural vulnerability. The alliance represents only 28% of global GDP and less than 10% of the world's population. When moral persuasion fails and physical dominance is gone, the alliance has to rebuild itself around a different set of priorities. The 2026 Evian summit marked the emergency pivot. To circumvent U.S. unreliability, the G7 added 8 new chairs for non-Western nations. Every country brought into the fold controls a specific piece of physical leverage that fills a gap in the traditional G7's reach. The G7 is essentially buying geopolitical insurance policies, building a portfolio of partners to secure global stability. The most immediate risk is the vulnerability of energy and trade. As the U.S. steps back from its Middle Eastern commitments, the world's primary choke points are exposed. Qatar and the UAE mitigate this energy risk. Qatar provides direct leverage over global LNG exports, while the Emirates offer critical spare crude capacity. Egypt secures the transit lanes. Their absolute control over the Suez Canal makes them a vital partner in managing trade shocks. If Washington abandons the Gulf, the G7 now has direct diplomatic lines to the nations physically controlling the fuel and the transit routes. Industrial capacity is the second major exposure. The G7 creates policy for future technologies, but lacks the infrastructure to actually build the hardware. South Korea provides the solution. They control 70% of global DRAM chips and maintain a massive world-leading shipbuilding capacity. This integration serves as the explicit insurance policy against Chinese industrial dominance. The third risk is isolation. The G7 is increasingly detached from the global south, creating an opening for the rising BRICS coalition. Kenya provides the necessary African institutional legitimacy and a foothold in the supply chain for critical climate economy minerals. Brazil acts as a massive agricultural supply chain for soybeans and meat, while simultaneously serving as a diplomatic router directly into the BRICS network. India completes the geometry. Their $18 trillion economy and massive population turn them into the ultimate swing state superpower. These specific partners prevent the G7 from becoming an irrelevant Western monastery by hardwiring the alliance into the resources of the global south. This visual grid illustrates the shift toward material leverage. The G7 is prioritizing physical assets, like microchips and transit canals, over the shared democratic values that once defined the club. The alliance is functioning as a defensive ring built around these physical dependencies. Global leaders have stopped trying to change American executive behavior. The world's diplomatic architecture is no longer waiting for the U.S. to stabilize. It is moving on. Instead of containing the U.S. president, the rest of the world is now deliberately bending the global architecture around him to survive. The G7 is drafting the first iteration of a post-American world order, a system where U.S. unreliability is permanently priced in.